HRR supply chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bicara Supply Chain. This is Nur Hadi, your host, and my guest today is Jort Meijer, a supply chain and business transformation expert and currently working for KPMG. He is based in Netherlands. Thanks for joining me, Jort.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so today's topic is creating value in supply chain management. But before we go into the discussions, can you please brief a bit about yourself and your professional background?
Yeah, of course, happy to do so. So, my name is Jort Meijer. I work since 2010 for KPMG in the supply chain and procurement space. Before joining KPMG, I graduated in the Technical University of Delft, where I studied mechanical engineering. Had a career within Capgemini at my own manufacturing company, and worked for supply chain software vendors in the space of retail planning and distribution. And over the past 10 years, I have been working on a number of international supply chain transformations with international companies in various businesses. Amongst them, material and life science, retail, and also energy and natural resources. And what I learned in all those engagements is that that the supply chain is one of the key contributors to value, and many companies are struggling with their supply chains in getting the goods at pace with their customers, and in the current market that is even becoming more and more important. But we will come to that in a minute, I guess.
All right, interesting. So I would like to ask a very basic question here. What is the key to value creations, Jort?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. But at the end of the day, it's all about having, and that is, of course, a little bit an open door, of course. It's all about getting goods and services at the pace of the customer, at the right place, at the right price, against the lowest possible cost. And there you see that the first dilemma comes in, because if you look back in history, most supply chain officers, COOs, have been focusing pretty much on operational excellence and getting the supply chains smooth and efficient, and cut out most of the cost. And also a lot of companies have worked very hard to lower their working capital and to make the supply chains as lean as possible. And in the current market, we see that only an efficient supply chain is not enough anymore to create value. And there are a couple of trends behind that, why that is not enough anymore. You see a lot of changing in customer and consumer behavior. Instant satisfaction, mobile is coming in, personalization, but also health and environment is giving pressure. On the other hand, you see a lot of channels are shifting. So we have mobile channels, omni channels, e-channels, and we have also the traditional channels. And we see competitors coming in, the platform companies who, for example, the Amazons of this world, who not only have a platform, but they're starting to sell through those platforms. We have hyperscale versus access to cities, and we see also trends in micro supply chains. So the operational excellence is under pressure, and that comes also with the Sustainability Act, where we have to reduce our carbon footprint. We have to go to a circular economy. We have, of course, the Paris Agreement, and therefore it is not only anymore about having this efficient supply chain against lowest cost, but it is also about that we do that in a sustainable way, and it needs to be delivered at the customer today. And that is what it all makes very challenging for people working in the supply chain.
And could you please share some of possible approaches for the supply chain value creation?
Yeah, we have, as KPMG, we have, of course, thought leadership on this topic. And what we see as the six dominant trends for the coming period are the following six, and where we say that the COO agenda needs to focus on for the coming decades. Mm-hmm. So first of all, let's start with the customer-centric supply chains, meaning that the supply chain doesn't need to be anymore at the fulfillment of goods and services, but it needs to organize itself around the customer satisfaction. Meaning that if you have a very smooth supply chain, it's not enough anymore. You need to deliver tomorrow, and you need to have the capability to do so. And therefore, you need to rethink your stock points, your delivery times, and what you see, and that is the second trend and future of item is the creation of micro supply chains. Mm-hmm. Why? Well, that is basically because companies see that, and the corona pandemic has also helped us in this to a certain extent, that when you have micro supply chains, you have you're with the production and the logistics, you are much closer to your customers, and therefore you are more agile to produce against customer promises, especially in the short-term delivery. Two examples for that is perhaps interesting. You might have heard about Zara. In the late 90s, when they introduced the fast fashion, they introduced already the micro supply chains to a certain extent, that they said, well, we want to have our production base as close as possible to our customer base, because we want to be able to react fast on customer trends and in-season development and delivery. Another example where you see that long supply chains have issues, and we have seen that in the COVID pandemic, where in the Dutch retail, funny enough, the big companies, the multinationals, had issues with stocks and couldn't deliver on promise to the retailers, where family businesses were able to deliver also in this pandemic period, because they have a less, how do you say that? A less strict working capital regime. So they had a little bit more stocks. They were not squeezed out, and actually they could deliver in times of difficulties in the supply chain. So second trend, micro supply chains. Then the third one is the ability to use cognitive decision centers, which is basically coming down to, okay, guys, we need to have decision centers who not only can forecast, but also can predictive and can use predictive technologies to run scenarios on the what if. And specifically in the type of issues we had with pandemic, but also in the climate change, where you have all kinds of climate-related hurricanes issues. There you see that the what-if scenario and the predictive supply chains can be more resilient to any incident what occurs. So that is the third trend, cognitive decision centers. And then the fourth trend is around future-ready capabilities. What we see is that many companies and organizations are looking for emerging technologies, but also, of course, with people, and that is the fifth trend, who can work with these technologies. And we talk about value chain, about IoT, about blockchain, robotics, RPA, and embracing these new technologies to get insight in their current situation and also to help them to predict what's next. So future-ready capabilities. Workforce is coming next, because workforce is one of the key elements to use these technologies in order to implement them in the organization. And last but not least, we see the platform economy, everything as a service, and companies need to rethink their business around platforms who are more and more embedded in the markets and in the society.
Interesting. So in the context of a supply chain value, how do you see the role of new technology, particularly when it comes to the stage of design and implementation?
Yeah, okay. Well, let me give you a few thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I see in supply chain, I see three types of systems. The systems of record, so the SAPs and the Oracles and the Microsoft of these worlds. These are technologies which give transactional, so the transactional basis of what you do as a supply chain officer, but also as a company. Then you have the systems of differentiation, and these systems give you competitive advantage to a certain extent, and these are less structured than the systems of record, but give you already insights and advantages. And the last part is the systems of innovation, where you say, okay, I need to be able to quickly play to so that is less structured than the other two, and it's more innovative. And with these systems, you are able to quickly adopt to certain trends, give direction, do what-if scenarios, and create based on these what-if scenarios and the analysis your steps into the future.
Yeah.
And the way you approach these three types of systems is differently. Where in the transactional systems, you need to structure things. You need it's also about basically structured data, And in the innovative systems, it's not only about structured data, but also about unstructured data. So the big data platforms and big data centers will use many unstructured data points where they create visions and what-if scenarios in order to help to improve the resilience of the supply chains.
Okay, so this will be my last question of today's podcast about the global pandemic of COVID-19, which is probably changing the way of seeing the supply chain, right? So in your personal view, what are the top priorities of actions? It could be a short, it could be long-term, that business leader need to be considered.
Yeah, well, I think one of the main things which will change here is that people will really now focus on transparency. So supply chain officers have been sort of surprised by the pandemic. So they want to have full transparency on their supply chain, not only for these type of incidents, but also to be able to get compliancy on their health and sustainability. And secondly, they want to have predictive analytics inside their company in order to be able to be more resilient to the possibility of these type of worldwide crises. And that is one of the things we see happening. And KPMG has also delivered and some supply chain risk platforms for big companies to give them the ability to say, okay, but what happens if there is a flood in Indonesia and I have a factory there? What is the best possible approach there? Can I reshift from the location? All these type of thinking is going to be faster embedded in the supply chain function. And because this supply chain officer is hammered by his CEO for not delivering, so he will make sure that he can deliver, and therefore he needs full transparency. He needs to know where the stocks are, where the products are, and how they can deliver, and he will make sure that he's more resilient, more flexible, therefore micro supply chains, and also more predictable. And he uses the new technologies for those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, so before we close today's conversation, do you still have any other key takeaway that you'd like to share with our listener?
Well, I'm looking forward to any conversations with people who heard this podcast. And if they want to have a chat, then of course happy to do so. And good luck with all the delivery within the supply chains.
Perfect. So, if any of our listener would like to get in touch with you directly, Jort, what is the best way to reach out to you?
People can send me an email via my email address at KPMG, meijer.jort@kpmg.nl, or they can search me in LinkedIn, as you did.
At Bichara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bichara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicharasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.